All right. Good afternoon or good morning, maybe good evening, depending on where you're joining from. I can see a couple of attendees on here. So we'll kick off in just a moment. I know it just hit 1 o'clock, so I'm sure we'll see that list growing as we start going. In the interest of staying on time today, we have a lot to cover, and I'm super excited for this conversation. So I'm going to go ahead and kick off. As we get started, we're on Zoom webinars. So if you're watching us live today, you won't be able to join us on video or in conversation, but that chat box is always open. You'll see there's a chat box where you can chat with each other. You can chat with us, your hosts and panelists. Or if you want to ask a question privately, there's a Q&A button as well. And if you pop your questions in there, we'll be sure to take them. We want to make this interactive. We want to hear your experiences, your stories, your questions. How can we support you? So definitely use that chat box or use that questions box as we get started here. We're also recording, so if there's anything you miss, you can definitely come back and watch the replay. I'm really excited to have our partners from Trustworthy with us today. I'm going to introduce Mariah Parker, who is joining me in this conversation about household equity. Mariah, you want to give us some background information? Tell us a little bit about Trustworthy.
Absolutely. Thanks, Megan. And I am so glad to be here to talk about household equity. I think we're all in agreement that this conversation is long overdue and one that we should be having all the time. But I'm happy to introduce Trustworthy as well. I'm the head of growth for Trustworthy, which is the family operating system, an online service that helps successful modern families protect, organize, and optimize their important information. We help you organize IDs, money, property, passwords, legal documents, taxes, and emergency instructions, everything you need to run a household equitably. And we make it easier for families to access and, most importantly, to collaborate on their most important information and household tasks.
It's a great tool. So whether you are a family unit with a married unit with kids, or you're in touch with your family, your parents, and helping them, or sharing information anywhere, it's a really great tool to help keep everything in one central location. So our conversation today is about household equity, and something that I think has become a much heavier topic in recent days, recent years. And we were saying there's no easy answer to this, right? We know that women often carry the brunt of what we do at home, but there's been more talk of how do we get the men involved? How do we make sure that there's more visibility? So Mariah, can you start us off with a definition of household equity? And I know it's not a simple answer just to define household equity, but if you can kind of walk us through, what are we talking about when we say household equity?
Oh, absolutely. So, like so many of us, whenever I start a presentation, I go to search for a definition to understand how things are understood. And when I looked for household equity, I found a lot of definitions on home equity, and specifically the financial term, but nothing on household equity. And I think that really encapsulates the problem that we're here to discuss. So household equity is partners doing equal amounts of work at home, sharing the responsibility for childcare and domestic labor. And the definition is changing over time, but it's still important to hold on to. I see it as a general ownership of tasks and responsibilities that's distributed fairly between a household, and also transparency into a household's most important information, that if something happens, the other partner has all the information they need to run a household while that first person is out of commission. So unfortunately, at this time, we're seeing a significant problem with household inequality. And I want to acknowledge there are all kinds of households and families, but the challenges we're seeing most commonly occur in mixed gender households and along gender lines. Specifically, women still do twice as much household work as men on average. And that's only been exacerbated by the pandemic. And speaking to the news from recent months, we found in a study just a month ago that dual income structures don't change that. In fact, when women earn more than men, they are more likely to do more housework in some kind of arrangement to restore traditional gender norms in the household. And so I'm excited to be here today to talk about how household equity has affected us, how we can improve equity at home, and how Trustworthy can help.
I love it. And so you brought up something, the idea of if one person in your household is suddenly unavailable, right? Having access to that information. And this is a lived experience I've had. And I can tell you the what ifs, like it's hard to plan for what ifs. Nobody wants to say what if, right? So
Mhm.
my husband at the age of 41 suffered a massive stroke while on a business trip, and his speech and language was impaired. When I arrived, he couldn't speak, he couldn't do anything. And guess who controlled all of our financials? Like everything was on his laptop, protected by a password. And like when you're in that moment, you're not thinking, okay, what's the password? How do I get into this? But it was, I feel very privileged in that I knew there was enough money in the bank. I knew that financially we'd be okay. But there's that panic of, how do I get the information? I don't know how to get into his laptop. We finally figured it out, but it was days of worry and days of stress, and the having access to information, I think, is really important. And it's nobody wants to plan for those what ifs, but take it from me, healthy 41-year-old man, you don't think this is going to happen, right? But the other things that we had talked about related to having that access, but also having that balance, is the benefits of why should we all care about this so much? I can see the perspective of, I have 3 kids, I work full time, and there's a stress level, right? There's everything is
Yeah.
on my plate and I have to do it all. So yeah, I'm always stressed. I'm always running around. Like I just had a new sign that says there's too many tabs in my brain open. Like there's constant overwhelm and stuff coming through. But we know there's other benefits to this as well, right, Mariah? There's other things that serve us. So other reasons we should be looking at equity in our household. Can you talk through some of the benefits for us?
Oh, absolutely. The first one feels very clear, but it's worth mentioning anyway. Equal partners tend to be more successful at work than people who do the bulk of the household labor at home. When you have that additional time to commit to work and you know someone else has your back, it makes it easier to be more successful outside of the home.
Mhm.
Another key benefit is that equal partners model equity for their children. There are research studies that show that when husbands are more participatory in the household, their daughters believe more about what they can be and who they can be and what they can accomplish. And sons gain a more egalitarian perspective of household roles.
Mhm.
So, as we talk about how to change, we can be the generational change as we model equity for our children. And also, equitable partners use more flexible work policies, which normalizes the use of things like paternity and maternity leave for everyone. It normalizes taking an afternoon off when your kid is sick. It makes it possible for us to do these things without being punished in the workforce.
Mhm.
Finally, there's a mental health component, as you mentioned. Research suggested at the beginning of the pandemic that both parents of all genders' mental health was affected by the conditions of the pandemic, but that women really bore the brunt of anxiety and sleeplessness over how their children would be cared for and how their house would be maintained. And so equal partnerships tend to distribute that load and help you feel less alone as you're working through these things.
That's the benefits, I think, are fantastic, right? And I don't think that anyone
Yes.
doesn't understand that. Something that happened for me recently, I was in Chicago on a business trip, and I don't generally travel a lot. My husband used to travel a lot. And so school, I'm the go-to parent. Something happens at school, they call me. And so I'm in Chicago, and all of a sudden I find out that one of my kids has come home sick from school. They didn't even call me. They knew mom was away. Just call my dad. Dad's got it. And
Mhm.
I thought, wow, like my oldest child is 13, and 13 years, this is the first time that I wasn't the go-to parent to be called. And it was an interesting shift in perspective of like, dad's got this, like dad's got it. And I think sometimes it's hard for us to think there's a control element, right? And we've talked about this before, you and I, Mariah, about like
Yeah.
we just take it all on.
Mhm.
But figuring out what they can take on is really important, and setting that example for our children is super important. Um, So I want to talk a little bit about our experiences because we talk a lot about generational upbringing and how our upbringing influences what we do and what we think. And Mariah, you and I have very different backgrounds, right? So I grew up, my father worked full time. My mom was a stay-at-home mom until I was much older. Mariah, why don't you share your upbringing? Because I think this offers a very different perspective of what I had as a child.
Absolutely. And I tend to hear that I have a very different perspective. So I was raised by a mother who worked full time and a stay at home father. And when my stay at home father had something to do, I was packed off to be babysat by my grandfather while my grandmother worked. And so this small family unit was my world. And I came out into the world thinking, oh, so as a woman, it is my job to provide for the family and to manage all the financial aspects of the family while the man stays at home and takes care of the children. And so I got the surprise of my life when I suddenly realized that was not how everybody else's family worked. And I really got this exposure to, in some ways, an egalitarian household, in other ways, a household with gender dynamics in the opposite direction that really showed me how important equity was.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think it's fantastic the way you were brought up. I think it's different than what we see in a lot of households, but I think it offers an interesting perspective on, hey, it doesn't have to be this way. Mom doesn't have to be the one that stays home, and we can find that balance. We have a question here. How does inflation affect health equity in our households? What can we do to navigate this and guardrails to protect our household operations and financials? Mariah, I don't know if you have any insights there. You wanna take a shot at that one. I think my perspective here is I think inflation absolutely affects health equity in our households. I think that when you have financial strain, when you have any kind of stress introduced, it's obvious it's gonna shift the balance in the household. I think some of the guardrails are having more equity in your household where there is shared responsibility. So everyone can work and everyone can feel like they're producing. It's not just on one person to carry all the financials and one person to carry everything at home. Mariah, anything else you would add there?
Absolutely. I'd start any conversation of greater equity with a conversation with your partner. And I think it's particularly important in the times that we're currently seeing.
Mm-hmm.
You want to sit down, understand what stress they're carrying, help them understand what stress you're carrying, and figure out a solution to what you're facing together.
Mm-hmm.
Things can vary so much based on what your financial situation is right now, what your household situation is. But I believe the best first step for everyone is talking to your partner about what you're experiencing.
Yeah, and that's, so I've talked in the past about, I was a stay-at-home mom for many years. When our first child was born, we moved to Shanghai, and I had this overwhelming sense of how do I have a kid and commute and figure out a job in Shanghai. So I said, I'll take some time off work, support my husband having his career. What ended up happening, we had another international move to Dubai. We had another baby. We moved home. We had another baby. And it became, okay, well, Megan stays home with the kids and dad goes off and works and travels and does everything else. And we fell into this routine of everything at home was on me and everything financial and at work was on dad. And that it just kind of fell into that, and there was a lot of resentment on my end because suddenly it's like, well, this isn't what I signed up for, right? I love being home with my kids, but I want to have a career. I want to go back to work. And so having to put, like, bring that up as a topic, right? It had to be a discussion item because suddenly I was shifting. We had ended up in this place and we had to shift to something different, and we made it work, but it was lots of conversations and it was lots of change. And I think you're right that having open conversations within your household about where is the stress, where is the imbalance, where do we need to change is step one.
Yeah. And you'll often find that your partner is also really stressed, maybe in a different direction, but maybe in the same direction. And
Mm-hmm.
you're ultimately in a relationship and you can be there as support for each other. Like household equity is also about true partnership and avoiding the resentments that build up when we aren't able to talk about these things.
Right. And that's because we've talked about the emotional labor, right? So there's the things I often use the emptying the dishwasher example, right? The dishwasher's full. How many people walk by that dishwasher and don't empty it, or just let the dishes pile up in the sink? But there's also kind of those things, like it's like the remembering to schedule the doctor's appointments and the dentist appointments, remembering to scan the forms for school, remembering to fill out everything for camp, remembering to bring the cat to the vet, knowing when the cat needs to go to the vet, registering the dog with the town. Like there's all those other things that have to happen that aren't necessarily visible all throughout your house. And so in my house, I use the dishwasher example all the time because I feel like my dishwasher runs with 3 small kids. We're always running the dishwasher. But in the past, I've let this build up to, like, it's not just they come, hey, can somebody empty the dishwasher? But it's like, why does nobody see that the dishwasher needs to be emptied? And so in the past, I think because I was always the one home all day, it was just, okay, I can do it. But COVID changed that. Suddenly everybody was home all day. And I think it built up even more because I suddenly was like, okay, you guys are all here all day. Why does nobody else see this? And so it opened lots of conversations in our house. But how do you think COVID impacted this conversation of household equity? Do you think it made things worse? Do you think it made things better? Do you think that there was more visibility on what's actually going on and how to divide the labor in the household?
I think it very much depends on the household. What we've seen in the overall research is that women have ended up doing a greater share of the increased work generated by COVID, even when both parents are home. But I think we're also seeing a greater understanding that this is a problem. More partners looking over and saying, oh, while I was at work all day, all this stuff was happening that I didn't realize about was happening. Or, oh, my partner has been trying to juggle her job and all of these other things that are happening. How could I potentially be helpful? And so this could be a watershed moment, both that the conversation is happening at all, and also in changing perspectives and generating that generational change we were talking about.
Right. I feel like I had another point there and I completely lost my track. It'll come back to me, I'm sure.
I'm happy to talk further about the emotional labor as we think of it.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a great direction to go in.
So this really came to the forefront of my mind when I read the article, Women Aren't Nags, We're Just Fed Up, where a woman told a story of wanting to have her bathroom cleaned for her birthday, but she didn't want the bathroom cleaned. She wanted her husband to figure out which cleaner they were hiring, do all the vetting of them, read the reviews. Yeah, that article, it's fantastic. And the husband was like, great, I'll pay for the bathroom cleaning. Like, which company do you want me to hire? Oh, that's what I wanted you to figure out. And then he struggled with the process, couldn't figure it out, and ended up cleaning the bathroom himself. And she was in tears saying, it's not about the bathroom. It's about the fact that I always have to be the one to figure these things out. And as we talk about generational things, I think it's very interesting to explore the differences we have in how we see our roles in the world from the upbringings we had. But one thing I've noticed, even though I was raised by men and I expected that I would be the primary breadwinner, and had a very traditionally masculine view of my role in the world, I find that I'm still the person who freaks out when our apartment isn't clean and our landlord randomly showed up, or I'm the person who freaks out when our apartment isn't clean and my mother-in-law is showing up, because I realize deep down that I am the person who's going to be judged for how the house looks. Like, my husband is not going to be judged at all. It's going to be on me, even when it's his mother coming.
So that I think is a common theme, and that is something that very relatable, because if anyone's coming to our house, I'm the one who's panicking over, okay, it all has to be clean, it all has to look good. And if there's a surprise visitor, I'm like, oh wait, this is not just part of the mess, right? And you're right that the judgment does it does people point to us as the ones responsible for it, right? It's not, oh, not everyone carrying their weight. Um, there's a comment here to us. Oh my goodness, I brought all of this up during our last couples therapy session. This is so validating. Thank you. Um, and that's one thing when we talk about these conversations, these depending on your relationship in your household. And this would be interesting in the chat if people want to share kind of more perspective on within your household, because then we can tailor this conversation a bit. But I
Yeah.
tend to speak to myself, married with 3 kids, but if you're going to approach these conversations, couples therapy is a great place to start. That's where we got to the root of all of this, where like I could actually explain the emotional labor. I could explain all the things running through my head, that it's like we're going on vacation and it's 2 weeks of planning and logistics and this, and he goes and packs his bag and puts it in the car, and I like everything else, and it's like having to explain the thought process and the things that go into that for him was very eye-opening. But those are tough conversations sometimes because we get so heated in the moment. So I think therapy is a great starting place. Sharon says, you bring a good point. Even if it is your partner doing the cleaning, women get the praise or the judgment rather than men. Correct. Yeah, very
Yep.
much so. Very much so. We do love having input in the chat. So if this is relatable, if you have questions, if you have things that work within your household, we'd love to hear about it in the chat. Definitely use that chat. You can use the selection to send it to everyone, or that little blue box, you can change it to just host and panelist, and then it only comes privately to the 3 of us here as hosts. So in terms of, I know that we can all sit here all day and kind of gripe and come up with examples and come up with the issues, right? It's very easy to point fingers and see what's going on. I like to be solutions focused. I like to say, okay, how do we fix this, right? Obviously it starts with a conversation. We have to identify the problem. We have to have the conversation. But I think that there's other things we can be doing as well. For me, a big part of it was trusting my partner to do the things that I needed him to do, and owning a task. So there's Eve Rodsky wrote a book, Fair Play, and one of the things she talks about is owning a task end to end. So if there's a birthday party invitation and he's responsible, he's RSVPing, he's buying the gift, he's wrapping the gift, he's taking the kid, he's making sure the kid gets home. So it's not just the driving. It used to be I did everything and then he drove to the party and brought them home. Now it's like, okay, here's the invitation, you go take care of the entire task. But there's that idea of giving up things, of trust, of building that trust and saying, I trust you to go do this, right? Do you think that that's an issue with people? Do you think that we try to control too much? Do you think that there's an issue of us letting go of some of these things?
I feel seen, first and foremost. Yes, there is a control issue, at least in this household. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I found that things got a lot easier when I just completely surrendered mental responsibility of, I'm going to give this to my husband to do. He's going to do it in his way. It will not necessarily align with my way. If there is something that is absolutely, he has to do it, I will really clearly communicate that to him. But otherwise, he might come up with a solution that works just as well that I wouldn't have thought of. I give the example, I had a period just recently where I was changing jobs and I was working like 16 hours a day at my old job, trying to prepare it and then trying to get ready for my new job. And I could not deal with food responsibilities. So I asked him to do it. I was thinking there might be some cooking. Instead, there was some ordering one of those like meal delivery services that sends you the prepackaged boxes of food that you heat up. Not the solution I would have chosen, but it worked. We were fed. The food was incredibly good. We actually got some ideas on stuff that we want to cook. And he was really proud that he was able to find that solution. So it's also surrendering the responsibility for it. And I think it comes back to judgment. It's us knowing that we're going to be judged as mothers if our kids' food isn't on the table in a certain way, if the house isn't clean. We're going to be judged as women. We're going to be judged left, right, and center. And I think we might actually get to a point where we're so afraid of that we don't realize how much people are thinking of how much everyone's consumed by how they're going to be judged.
Yep.
To a point where they have far less time for judging others than we think they do.
Yeah.
And so it's freeing yourself.
It is. And I find it interesting because if I have people coming to my house, I want my house clean. I want it to be presentable. But when I go to other people's houses, there's no judgment. I'm not looking around going, oh, you didn't clean that and that's messy. Like I don't do that. And so it's interesting that I put that burden on myself. And it's likely partially of how I was raised. My mom always wanted the house to be presentable at all times. But it's hard to let go of that. Oh, I'm going to be judged. I'm going to be judged. But then also the surrendering and giving up control. And I think you brought up an interesting perspective of let them solve it their own way, right? As long as everyone's safe and everyone's healthy and like we're all okay in the end, it doesn't have to be my way of doing it. And there's a control issue there. But if you can surrender to that and come up with some things that your partner can take over, let them be creative, let them solve it in their own way, give them the freedom to do that. Because then they're going to feel really good about themselves too. And that's going to help.
You're giving them agency and a chance to feel pride over what they're doing. That I find that a lot of the lessons I've learned about management at work really apply to the household of if you micromanage an employee and you do something for them, they start to learn, oh, why would I bother doing this work? Because my boss is going to come in and redo it. Like I won't even bother. I feel completely taken out of this process. I feel bad about myself whenever I try. So I'm not going to.
Yep.
And I was doing the same thing to my partner at home.
Exactly. So we have a couple of comments here. These came just to host and panelists, so I'm going to read them. I think they're great comments. Someone says, that is so interesting because in the beginning of my motherhood journey, I felt all of these things. But since then, my husband and I have had conversations about this all the time. And I literally set very clear boundaries about what I will and will not do. And I don't tie my value to household tasks. My husband and I are both adults. So when I back off of a task and release control, if it flops, we use it as a learning example. And to be honest, it rarely flops. It just gets done differently, which makes your point about releasing control so powerful. Sometimes we create our own problems because we fear judgment. When I released that fear, I began to excel at home. And I love that. I think I want to hone in on setting the boundaries, being very clear about what your boundaries are, but then also not tying our value to household tasks. Super important. So love this comment. And then the other one, I would delegate household tasks to the kids. I would help them. To get the honey involved included speaking their love language, then reminding them I needed help. It worked, ladies. So definitely this can be a family conversation, right? It's good to teach our kids how to do this. It's good for kids to know how to do the laundry and how to organize the house and how to start cooking and how to clean the kitchen. Like those are tasks they will take with them their entire lives. So definitely getting kids involved is great. One of the other things that we talked about doing is a household audit and having the list of things in the house, right? So once you start this conversation with your partner, doing an audit of all the things and literally coming up with that list of what are all the things, because I'll be honest, in my house, while I was doing everything at home, there were things he was doing that I didn't see related to our finances or related to our insurance, related to some of those things. And I didn't have visibility to it. So it's not that he wasn't doing anything. It's just, it wasn't visible. And I felt the brunt of the things that were in the house. What do you think about doing a household audit? Do you think this is helpful? Is it a good starting point as we approach this conversation?
I think it's incredibly important. It's a chance to see everything that's being done and understand the division of labor. And I think it's so common to form misconceptions about what your partner's doing because you see your work more than theirs, and they might see their work a lot more than yours. And so sitting down and saying, okay, what is all the work we're doing for our household? who's actually doing the work, and is this the best distribution of the work? There is research that suggests that women are more likely to take on gendered roles like cooking and cleaning, even if they're objectively worse at it. And challenging these gender paradigms starts with us. Are we really the best person to be cooking? My partner watches Gordon Ramsay videos for fun. I look for like fastest meal prep recipes that I can put together between work meetings. Like maybe he should be cooking. Um,
Absolutely.
and so
Yeah.
it's finding, like, is there a distribution of work that's fair, that takes
Mhm.
advantage of our natural abilities? Are those natural abilities different from what we've been told by society?
Mhm. Mhm. Somebody just shared in the chat, doing a household audit is exactly what our therapist tasked us to do this week.
Yep.
And then Sharon says, we use notes on our iPhones and shared it with our teenage children at that time. We had dinner week menu, grocery shopping, and home improvement punch lists. So really having visibility and including the entire family into that conversation so that it's when the kids can help out, they're encouraged to do so. I think that's great. So in terms of other things we can do, we talk about shared time responsibility. So like taking out, like when the kids are homesick, right? And who takes off.
Yep.
Now, historically in my house, I've worked from home. So guess what? I'm home already. It's very easy. That has shifted with COVID. We're both home most of the time. And, but then there's also trading career sacrifices, which I think is important because often that I mean, what I have seen is it doesn't necessarily happen for the women. Although I have a very good friend, and they're relocating to Chicago this summer from the Boston area because she had a fantastic career opportunity, and the whole family is supporting and following. And it's so nice to see that example of, hey, mom got her dream job in Chicago, and we all support her, and we're all going. And I think that that's again the generational things, the things that sort of we all were brought up with, but changing that perspective and really giving women the power to own their careers and to say, hey, you know what, someone's homesick today, but I have a lot of meetings, so can you stay home with the kid instead?
Yeah.
Is something I think that we need to be looking at.
Yeah. Early in my career, my partner moved to Memphis so that I could work at one of the best children's research hospitals in the country. And then I moved to New York and almost moved to Germany so that he could continue doing the research that he started when he moved to Memphis for me. And then we stayed in New York so that I could further my career. And so I felt some of that resentment over where we were living when it wasn't entirely my choice. And a big part of evening that out was recognizing that our careers were of equal importance. And there were times when my path would take it on the chin for his path, but he would also make those same sacrifices for me. And that it was about what was best for our family in that moment. But I think without that mutual sense, you end up in a position where you're further and further and further off the track that you intended to be on because you've made more and more and more sacrifices. And we've got to acknowledge that as a society, we're the ones who are expected to make sacrifices.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's, I mean, in my house, that happened for years. We moved a lot to support my husband's job. And recently with a therapist and with support, I realized that there was deep down resentment because we talked about it with the first move to Shanghai, but then it sort of started stacking. And it was always his career. I didn't have a career, so it made sense that we were following his job. But suddenly it was like, hold on, like this was supposed to be 18 months in Shanghai, and then I was going back to work. And now I'm 5 years later and 3 kids in, and suddenly this changes drastically. And there was some resentment there. There was like, hey, what about me? And I have found my way into what I call my perfect job. I sort of rolled into where I am now, and I have absolutely no regrets about getting here. But there were some challenges along the way when suddenly I took this pause and was like, well, wait, what about my career? What about what I want to do? And it was a lot of conversation. And we had gotten to a point where we followed his career and we followed that path and we kept going. But we always did it because it seemed like the right thing to do in terms of the chasing the financial gains and chasing the career moves. But there was resentment, and it took me a while to kind of identify that and bring it up. Back into the chat, Shelly says, everything continues to come back to sharing time, and it's the one commodity I seem to have less of. We as women are often always piling our plates high. Yes, we are. And that's where boundaries are very, very important. Sharon added, we're in the process of talking to our grown-up daughters about our wills, advanced care planning, and estate planning, so they know what our end-of-life desires and how to execute them, which is super important. Very, very important conversations to have.
Oh yeah, that actually, I want to quickly say our parents' household equity affects us. I'm growing up into a world where my mom is 9 years older than my dad. And so there's a conceivable time when it is just my dad, and she managed all the family's finances. So their equity means that I might be teaching my dad how to do all these things.
Yep. Yeah. And having, Sharon, I give you credit for having those conversations now, and you're of sound mind and you can clearly communicate your expectations and what you want. My grandmother is 97 years old. She'll be 98 in September. She just moved into a nursing home. And some of these conversations were not had previously. And it wasn't well planned for, and the stress that creates for the family at that point in time is insane. So I think it's, Sharon, I give you a lot of credit for going through that exercise now. It's something I've done with my parents now because they're younger, and we can have great conversations about it, and all feel like we know the right information and we know what needs to happen.
Yep.
Yes, 97 years young, she is. So I want to shift us a little bit to dive into trustworthy, because I think that what I often talk about is that we know that there's problems, right? We know that women carry a lot of the load, both physically and mentally. We know that it's all on us. And so for me, I look for systems and tools and processes that can help support me and my family. And so that's where we've brought Trustworthy in. Trustworthy is a fantastic tool that does that. So we have Debbie joining us from the Trustworthy team. She's going to take us through a little show of Trustworthy. She's going to dig in and show us how it all works, with the idea that you can set up the collaboration, you can set up the information, you can set up all your documents. So Debbie, welcome. Thank you for being here with us today. And why don't you go ahead and share on your end as we're going through this. If there's other things anyone wants to share in the chat or any questions, pop those in the chat and we'll make sure we bring those up as well.
Great. Thank you so much, Megan. I appreciate it. I'm thrilled to be here and to show you a tool that was designed with this household equity in mind. I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to just show you a couple of things that relate to what we're talking about today. So trustworthy.com literally is designed to help you with household equity, assigning tasks, getting everything organized and in one place in a digitally safe, secure cloud. You're able to have multiple households, so you could have your own as well as your parents. We were just referring to, the day is going to come where you might have to take care of your parents' issues and their estate. So having an account for them is really a gift to yourself in the future. And this screen is, once I go to sign in, it shows if I have other accounts, for instance, for my parents or for my adult children. Conversely, it goes both ways. It shows that I can easily access those accounts right from my sign-in screen. So right now, I'm going to show you the main account holder, which in this case is Jackie McKinley. Now, please know this is a demo, so all of these people and information are fake. We would never share real information. So just so that you're aware. So we found with research that the challenges are not only in getting organized and figuring it all out, but in staying organized and staying on top of it, keeping things current. And this is where Trustworthy really goes the extra mile to help your family. And it's loading slowly today. Not sure why, but we'll get there. Over here on the left, you see our categories. They're always listed here on the left, and they're hard-coded. And these categories were derived by customer research and basically what most families have. And we do have a couple other categories coming soon, medical and business. And those are based on customer research and requests. We do listen to our users. If there's things that you need that Trustworthy doesn't provide, you let us know and we update our roadmap. So the first thing you notice here is a progress meter. For our type A personalities, that's huge, right? It's motivating. It lets you know, hey, this is where you're at. Let's get this done. The next thing you're going to see is this banner. This banner really tells you everything that's coming out, everything that's been released, and we are forever releasing new functions and features because, as I said, we listen to our users, so we update. And you'll always see anything new that comes out listed here for you, so you can stay on top of it and take advantage of our new releases. So one of the things a lot of people ask for is a checklist. What kind of information should I put in Trustworthy? I don't even know where to begin. So what we came up with is this to-do list. This to-do list shows you every single item in every one of these categories. So you can quickly come down here and see what you're going to need to get filled out. And this will give you a really good starting place when you're overwhelmed and you have all this information, you don't even know where to begin. This is a great place to begin. But this goes a little further than that. These 3 dots here on the end allow you to assign to-dos. So here we are again at equity, right? You can have your partner help you get things filled out. You don't have to do it yourself. And Trustworthy does the nagging, quote unquote, for you, because we'll send the to-do to your partner or spouse. And then once they complete the to-do, you'll be notified. So we'll take care of that part of it for you so you don't have to. So again, making your life a little easier. But guess what? We go even further. You can even get your professionals involved and they can help you. And a great example of that is your accountant. Let's say you have an accountant that does your taxes. During the year, you go through the year and you put in the information for your taxes, whether it's a receipt or maybe it's a statement or something that came in the mail. Add it into your taxes category. You can then add your accountant as a collaborator and give them access to your taxes category. Time to do the taxes, send them a to-do. Hey, everything's here, ready for you to process. Once they've completed your taxes, they can upload the return for you. So taking that whole, trying to figure out where to put stuff and how to keep it and how am I going to get it from him, that whole problem is resolved. Now, we mentioned staying current, keeping things current, because once we get it organized, it's not just a get it in here and done. It's got to stay current, right? So that's where Trustworthy really goes the extra mile with automated reminders. Anything that has an expiration date, Trustworthy is going to send you a reminder. It's going to show up here. It's going to show up in your email. And up here at the top of our screen, you'll see this little lightning bolt. It'll show up here as well. So again, this is anything with an expiration date. So maybe it's your driver's license, maybe it's your passport. The system will automatically remind you these things are coming up and need to be reviewed. This is going to save you time, stress, and money, because there's a lot of things, if you don't renew it, it's going to cost you later. So really saves you a lot. What's really cool is we go the extra mile in allowing you to create your own custom reminders in every single category. People use that, and myself included, for bill due dates, because I'm notoriously forgetting when things are due. So I set up custom reminders for my bill due dates. I get an email, it reminds me, and I pay it. So I'm on top of it. And this is huge. People love this because it really takes a lot of the stress out of your lives. You're going to notice we have an inspiration for ideas to help keep life even more organized for you and make your life easier. In this case, it's paint colors. If you've ever gone to buy paint, you know that the code and the color have nothing to do with each other. There's no rhyme or reason. So if you put the paint code into your home tile in your property category, when it's time to repaint, that stress is gone. So, and you'll find other ideas here as well. You'll also see that each account comes with a personalized concierge. And that's what I am in Trustworthy. I'm the lead concierge. And what this is anytime you have a question, you're not sure, I have this piece of paper, I don't know where it should go. I don't know how to organize this. You click this little chat button, it shows up to your concierge everywhere, phone, tablet, desktop, PC, laptop. So you can always find us and we'll answer you within 15 minutes. Additionally, we do have a service where you can get extra time with your concierge. So let's say you're time starved, you're doing 25 million things, you're running the house, you're working, you just don't have time to mess with all of this. You can actually have your concierge help you, whether that means moving your data for you, organizing it within your system for you. The options are unlimited. Anything your imagination can come up with, we can help with. So that's available as well. You can always book a meeting right from your dashboard or call or text us. The other thing I do want to touch on is our mobile app. If you have an iPhone, we have a mobile app, which lets you do everything on your phone that you can do on a laptop or PC. Additionally, it has a scanner. That's right, it's an intelligent scanner. So, you know, you're sitting there when I'm talking about receipts for your taxes, you're like, well, how am I going to put that in here? You pull out your scanner and you scan it directly into the taxes category or any category. You have a new insurance policy. It's hard coded, right? It's hard paper. You just scan it and say you want it in that insurance tile, and that's where it goes. So it really takes the drama and the trauma of getting things digitized, erases that problem for you completely. I'm going to show you just quickly a couple of our categories so you can get an idea. So in Family Ideas, when you create your account, you're going to tell us who's under your household, who's under your roof. So it's, you know, you, maybe your spouse or partner, children, pets, because they are part of our families. And you can store all their information in here. Now, when your account is created, we're going to give you these, what we call tiles. That's what these boxes are. And these are our suggestions to you. You can change this. You can add more people or pets. If you get a new dog, you can add them, no problem. So let me show you what's in here. So we have the picture of the account owner, of course, birth date, Social Security, vaccine card, driver's license, loyalty cards, travel cards, roadside assistance cards, whatever you need, birth certificates. And then you have a place down here where you can add additional files. Now you can do this the old fashioned way, browse files and attach it. You can drag and drop, and you can use that scanner that we talked about on the mobile app to get things in here very quickly and easily. You also have a notes section, which is encrypted, and you can use this to personalize the account for your family. Now over here, you see those reminders that I was talking about. You'll see both the automated reminders as well as any custom reminders that you might create. They're going to show up inside the category for you. Custom reminders can be created just by clicking this create new reminder, give it a title, choose a date, and you can even have it repeat whatever frequency you desire. So helpful, believe me, it keeps my bills paid on time. One of the things that so many people run into that I really want to share with you is sharing our information with people who are not in our Trustworthy account. So that would be, let's say you are applying for a loan and your loan officer needs a copy of your driver's license, whether it's something in these blocks here or an attachment, doesn't matter where it is in your system, in what category. You simply click on it. You'll see the share button on the right, click that. And what it's doing is creating a secure link to only that item. So whatever it is, an image, a document, a PDF, whatever the case may be. When I click next, it's going to allow me to assign a timeout to this link, which means I can say you have access to this driver's license for an hour, for a week, for a month, whatever time frame you deemed appropriate. Once you've chosen that time, it creates the link for you. And you can see it here. You can copy it. And if you want to send it via text or if you want to send it via email, you can do that right from here. What makes this especially powerful is not only the security of sending the link as opposed to the actual document, which we know sending things via email is dangerous these days. But if we go to our manage access screen and we scroll down, we can see every link we've created. So we can see what it was, when it was created, how long that expiration is for, and if it gets opened, you'll be notified of that as well. And you'll be able to see who opened it, when, and what they did with it. Did they download it? Did they just view it? And you can revoke access at any time. So giving you really complete control over your information, which is something very new and exciting. Here on this screen, you can see all the people that you can add to your account. You have options. You can do all access collaborator. That's usually your spouse or your partner. That means they can see and do everything you can see and do. You also have limited access collaborators. These are your professionals. You just want to give access to one or two categories, or perhaps it's an adult child that you just want to be able to see their information. It's up to you. You add these people by clicking Add Role on your Manage Access. And again, once you click Collaborator, you can invite someone else if they're not already in your system, like your professionals. But if they are in your system, you can quickly decide whether they're going to be all access or limited. And when you say limited, let's say it's your accountant, you could give them, they're going to need access to your taxes, maybe to your money, and maybe your family IDs. And hit Next, and they get an email giving them notification that they've been invited as a collaborator. Once they get that, you'll see if they accept it. They'll create their own username and password to the account. And once they're in, they can only see that which you give them access to, nothing else. The other level of access is called emergency contacts. And earlier on, somebody mentioned telling their kids about their estate documents and getting estate planning ready. And that's something we all need to do. Emergency contacts is something that you choose somebody, whether it's the executor of your will or somebody outside of your household that would need to handle your affairs should something happen to you or your spouse or partner. This person, these people, you can have as many as you like, will not have any access to anything in your system today. They'll get an email letting them know that they were chosen as your emergency contact, and they'll be directed to our website, but we have an entire page devoted to emergency contacts. It lets them know who we are, what we do, what we're about, and why they were chosen. Then if something does happen, they're instructed to contact us. We verify, again, the added value of having a concierge. We verify that something in fact did happen to you to help prevent fraud. Once it's been verified, we give them access. And again, we go that extra mile. We hold their hand through it, so they're not floundering trying to figure out where stuff is. The concierge is here to walk them through and help them find what they need. Another one I want to point out is the estate documents. Again, we were just talking about this. I talk to people so often that tell me that yes, they have a will and they have a power of attorney, but it's in a closet, in a box that they did 10 years ago. It makes me cringe. It really makes me cringe because this is so important, especially if you're a parent, right? So you put it in here. Now, here's the catch. We do not have expiration dates on our wills, which is good because life changes. So what we do is when you add your estate documents to Trustworthy, we're going to ask you when that document was created. You put in that date. This way, the system can do the automated reminder thing and send you a message every year, letting you know it's been a year. Has life changed? Do these things need to be updated? Once again, you can give your attorney access to your estate documents, and they can help you keep these current and updated. Makes sense? So you do have money and property and passwords, insurance, taxes, emergency planning, and family archives. So just about everything you could think of is here. You can keep it all in one place. So there's no more, hey, where's the insurance document? Or hey, where's our health insurance card? None of that. Now you both have access. It's right here. You can pull it up on your phone or on your desktop or laptop. And I'm just going to share one little quick story with you that I like to share with everybody that uses Trustworthy or thinks about using Trustworthy. I have a client, and of course I would not give a name, but he was driving somewhere and had forgotten his wallet, but Lord knows he had his phone because they are an extension of our hands. Well, he got pulled over. He didn't have his wallet, so he was able to pull up his driver's license, his registration, his proof of insurance on his phone and show that to the officer. Not only did he not get a ticket, but that officer is now a member of Trustworthy. So it really shows that Trustworthy is not just a repository for your information, but it is a utility that can really help you out in day-to-day living. Any questions?
Debbie, thank you for showing us how it all works. I think that's It's always nice to have the visual. And I think I can see how it helps us see more of what's going on and more of what do we need to be aware of? What are the expiration dates? When is something coming up for renewal? When is a bill due? All of that. There are a couple of questions that came in, so I'll run through these. Definitely put more in the chat if you have them. If we run out of time here, we can connect you with Debbie and her team to follow up as well, I'm sure. Is there a backup or the ability to back up your information? So
it is stored in the cloud, and we do the backups for you. If you choose to have a backup of your own, you can do that, but we do it for you, and it's much safer for us to do it because of the security we have in place.
Right. And then does Trustworthy link to Quicken or QuickBooks? Does this link work with a patient portal if you have an updated medical insurance card?
Not today. However, these are things that you will see coming in the future. We are forever updating and linking with other providers, which we will continue to do. Today, it is not.
Awesome. There was another question that came in privately asking about security, because obviously there's a lot of information stored here.
Absolutely.
And it's like, I'm putting everything here.
Right. And that's the top question we get, because if you're not thinking about security, there's a problem, right? When Trustworthy was created, security was priority number one, and it has remained as such. We have SOC 2 certification. If you're familiar with that, it's a pretty tough one to get, as well as HIPAA compliance. Again, very difficult to get. We've gone through numerous penetration tests. That's where you hire a company whose sole purpose is to hack your system. That is what they are paid to do. And I'm pleased to say that we have passed with flying colors each and every time. You can go to trustworthy.com/security to read extensive details on how we're securing your information. But I'm here to tell you that we are above bank level secure. We've had absolutely no issues, and I have all of my information in here, as do all of our other members.
Mm-hmm. Can you talk for a minute? How long on average does it take to set up the account? What's the kind of the onboarding time? So
the really cool thing is Trustworthy gives you a 14-day free trial. And you can just go to trustworthy.com and click the start free trial. And it's like a 5-minute process to set that up. It's going to ask you your name. It's going to ask to create a username and password. It's going to ask the names of the people in your family. And then it just sets it up for you. And you'll see some little tour pop-ups that come up once you've created it that lets you know how to do things. And your concierge is available to walk you through how to customize it for your family. And each and every account, regardless of what level, comes with that free Trustworthy onboarding with your concierge. So please take advantage of that, because it really does help.
Awesome. There's another question here. What happens if there's a security breach? Are there certain actions and plans taken by the app or company? Do you have contingency plans mapped out?
Absolutely. We have everything's in the cloud, as you know, but if you're familiar with security and techie stuff, we have servers in multiple places to avoid natural disasters and security breaches and things of that nature. So they have backup plan after backup plan. So as I said, we are above bank level, and I encourage you to go to trustworthy.com/security to read all about that.
Awesome. So one more question here. I know we're at the end of the hour, so we will wrap up soon, but somebody asked, is this a one-time conversation on household equity, or are there more fireside chats coming? If you guys like this, we are happy to offer more fireside chats. We do a lot of these through our local chapters. Mariah and I could probably sit here and talk about household equity all day. And if there is a request or a need for continued conversation, I am happy to help make that happen. I think this is a very important topic, and I think that identifying more tools, more resources, more support, and helping us all feel not so alone is really important. So definitely reach out if you want to see more of this. We can make that happen. Mariah and Debbie, thank you for bringing us Trustworthy today. I loved this conversation, and I loved seeing the tool in action. For those of you watching live, thank you for joining us. Anything you want to share as we wrap up here, Mariah?
Just that this is a process, and it's not going to be perfect, but if you start having these conversations with your partner, you're going to find a better path forward. And the way you feel today doesn't have to be the way that you feel forever. So
Absolutely.
just want everyone to know it's going to get better. And we're going to keep
Absolutely.
talking about it.
We will, for sure. So if you're interested in checking out trustworthy.com, there is a 14-day trial. If you use code IAW, you can save 20% on your first year as well. Reach out to us or directly to Trustworthy if you have any questions. Thank you so much for those joining us here live today, and I hope you all have a great day. Mariah and Debbie, thank you so much for being here. Take care.
Thanks,
Have a
Megan.
great day.
Have a good day.
Bye.
You too.